Hey there, in this tutorial I'm going to show you just a couple tips to re-gearing your Toyota gear-driven transfer case with 4-7 gears. I'd recommend getting the gears from Marlin Crawler because Marlin's the best. Trail gear ones are kind of crap. I am following the Marlin Crawler manual, which I'll put a link in the description. It's a pretty helpful manual, but it's kind of hard to tell some things just from the little pictures. So I'll just kind of point out some little tips and the process that I do it. There's really no wrong way or order to take it apart or put it back together. It's all pretty simple. Some of the tools that you need, an impact is nice to get these nuts off. If you don't have an impact, I highly recommend taking these off while the transfer case is on the truck, and you can put it in gear and get a lot of leverage on it. You also need a big shop press. I mean, not big, just the Harbor Freight 20-ton shop press works great. And if you don't have it, you should just go buy it because it's cheap and works awesome. Otherwise, things to keep in mind, just keep everything really clean and you should have a good time. Oh, one other thing, good snap ring pliers are a must for this. There's a lot of big snap ring pliers. They're not super strong. Well, one is, but just a good quality set of snap ring pliers will make it a lot easier. Also, if you're debating to re-gear, I can't recommend it enough. I think this is the best mod that you can do to any older Toyota truck. It goes so much slower through obstacles. It's way more controlled. It's way better engine braking down, scary ledges and stuff like that. It makes it a lot safer and more capable and easier to drive. You don't have to be on the clutch as much. I would say that it's a no-brainer. All right, so step one to making yourself a 4-7 transfer case is take everything apart into a bunch of pieces. You can print out this manual on Marlin Crawler, which tells you how to all take it apart and even has steps. So you can put things in little baggies and label them with the steps. It'll make it a little bit easier to put them together, or just spread it all out in a table in kind of an order. Also, before you take it apart, you should pressure wash the whole thing down. Get all the grime and crap off it. Most of these are pretty dirty when you take them out of the truck, and if you take it apart while it's all dirty, it's just going to get everywhere and it's a huge mess. So take it out of the truck, pressure wash it, don't worry about water getting inside. You're taking it apart, it's going to dry out anyways, it'll be just fine. It'll make your life a lot easier. All right, next step is you're going to get these all cleaned off. You're going to want to get all your gasket material off this. I just put them in the parts washer and let the paper gaskets soak, and then they came right off with a razor blade, and then I scrubbed them with a bristle, like a wire brush, and that got them nice and good. The gaskets on these are super thin, so it's important that you don't mar this surface at all or change its flatness, because the gasket can really only deflect for so much and help it seal. But yeah, basically just get them all cleaned up, and now I'm going to start going through each little part and changing out all the bearings on it and the different gears that it comes with in the 4-7 kit. I am doing a full rebuild on this transfer case just because some of the bearings are starting to get some rough feeling in them. You do need to press this bearing off this main shaft, which can be a little tricky. You just need a large Harbor Freight bearing puller, a decent press. You only have to use it a couple times, so you can probably just go and borrow a friend's if you have one, or just buy one of these because they're pretty cheap. And some block of wood, and should be able to get it up, and it presses right off. If you try and do this without a press, it's significantly harder, so get a press. You're going to want to apply assembly lube to all your bearing surfaces and the needle bearings when you reassemble it, just to avoid a dry start or dry rotating. Pressing these bearings back on can be a little bit tricky, especially this main shaft one, because the shaft's about this long in here. But luckily I found this piece of 2-inch quarter wall DOM in my scrap bin. It seems to work just fine. So if you have any 2-inch tubing around there, then you're fine to press this on, but you may need to go buy something. Update, 2-inch quarter wall is just a hair too small in the ID. So a 2-inch 120 wall would be perfect, or just whatever you got. But test it all the way on there first, because there is a little bit of a lip that it has to go over. 1 5/16 inch socket works well to press the bearing on the countershaft gear. Had to use the 2-inch quarter wall DOM to press the bearing onto the input gear. 2-inch 120 wall would also work good. The fit on these bearings is real nice. It's really not taking much pressure at all to put them on. So you may be able just to heat these bearings up in the microwave or in the oven, and they may just slip right on without having to press them. All right, now I have everything cleaned, prepped. Got new bearings on and everyone replaced. What you don't need to do, that was just because I was doing a full rebuild. If you do a full rebuild, getting this bearing out of this cover is a pain in the ass. I had to use a slide hammer to like grab it and pull it out, and totally destroyed the bearing while doing it. So if this one seems in good condition, I would recommend not touching that. I also clearanced my my reduction housing so that I can put my my big gear in there, and it clears just fine. I just used a 4.5-inch angle grinder and just kind of went around there and clearanced out the sides, and that seems to work pretty well. A little bit easier than using a die grinder. What else do? We got our shifter is clearance there. We got our fork. We kind of clearance the radius there. I'm not sure exactly how much material we're supposed to remove. I think this is about what it looks like in the picture in the Marlin manual, but we'll have to test fit it to check it out. When you clearance your shift fork, or not the shift fork, the other side, make sure that you clearance it on this side, the low edge, not this side, the big edge, because this side faces up. So this is wrong. Do it on the bottom, the low edge. It's kind of hard to tell in the manual, and you feel kind of dumb when you do it like this. Another thing I did, my gears that I had in it, if you look at the teeth on them, they're all nasty and pitted. I didn't want to use these, so I pulled out one of many transfer cases that I have and stole the gears from that. If you've been messing around with old Toyotas long enough, you'll have a couple of these transfer cases laying around, which is handy. Also, another thing, my shift forks, they're pretty worn, which I don't like, but it should be fine. This one here was worn to the point where there was like almost a 1/16 of an inch out of it, which I was worried that was gonna start to pop out of gear. So I just welded more material onto these flats there and then ground it down to the width that this one was, which is right around 8.7 millimeters. Another thing I did was on the sealing surface on my input and output, or my output flanges, I polished them up real good, just with some 220 grit sandpaper and WD-40, just so that the seal will seal on them really nice. Now at this point, I'm just going to start reassembling. I'm going to go in the order that I disassembled. So instead of following the Marlin manual all the way through, I'm just going to do the disassembly section in reverse. And that should work out well. I'm going to be careful when I go through to make sure that these seal surfaces are nice and clean. I'll probably wipe them down with some brake parts cleaner. I do highly recommend getting a new seal kit. You can reuse the seals, but there's a really good chance that it'll leak, and for 50 bucks, just buy the seal kit. It's for what you're putting into this transfer case and the amount of time that you're going to put in it, just do the seals. Here's my clearance shift fork after test fitting it. Here's the clearance on the gear in between the shift fork. In addition to clearancing the housing here, you also need a clearance here and here, just because it's a really tight fit. Got the crawl box all assembled. It's pretty easy up to this point. Just make sure that everything's really clean and all the gasket sealing surfaces are nice. I'm not putting any sealant. I'm just using dry paper, and that worked for Toyota and that's worked in the past. But pretty easy to get to this point. Just follow the Marlin crawler instructions. At this point, you need to decide if you're going to be doing twin sticks or just the normal single stick. If you're doing twin sticks, you need to throw this in the trash. This is a little interlock pin that makes it so that you can't go into two-wheel drive low range if you have twin sticks. So throw this down if you're doing twin sticks. It's the thing that goes down in this hole in between the shift forks. On this front output cover, make sure that you put this little galley here down in the bottom corner. You can see there's a little hole that it needs to line up with. On your yokes, you want to put a little bit of RTV on the threads so that they don't leak out. And you just smear that around, flop your washer down, and put your nut on. This is just so that it doesn't leak out past the threads, because it doesn't seal that great in there sometimes. I also highly recommend getting new nuts when you do this, because the old ones, they do have like a stake where you have to stake them down, and if they've been taken on and off several times, that's probably beat to crap and not worth reusing. Yay, now your transfer case is all together and has 4.7 gears and will be super awesome. I did put some gas oil sealant on the detent plugs just to keep them sealed. It seemed like they did that from the factory. But it's all together. Now go install it in the truck and have some fun.